Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. I'm back with my fellow panelists, Lisa Skavinsky of Dog Educated, Emily Priestley of Wild at Heart, Christy Benson of Christy Benson Dog Training and the Academy staff. And we're here today to talk about something which we know is a contentious issue, but we really feel pretty strongly about, and we have, a good probably 100 years of collective experience between all of us. And that is dog play, dog parks, puppy play in class, for instance, and fear of dogs, FOD, something that we think is at epidemic proportions and kind of not acknowledged. So we are, just as the preamble, we are always curious and we're always open to learn more about dogs. But we do take exception to the seemingly endless parade of fads that reduce dog welfare, reduce our guardians' ability to manage dogs, meet their needs, and sometimes ends up sending dogs to aversives trainers. In this episode, we are going to talk about the anti-dog play movement, especially dog parks and free play and puppy class, and how it's harmful. So we're going to talk about the downside of this. Refusing to allow a social species to interact as they wish with their conspecifics due to practitioner preference or fears should be considered malpractice. I should say at the outset that not all dogs are socialized to other dogs, and not all dogs like to play as adults, and not all dogs like going to dog parks. We acknowledge that, of course not. So we're not talking about dogs who don't want to play with other dogs or go to dog parks. What we are talking about is dogs who would, if they had sufficient opportunity, would do so, but are denied this opportunity, and then this denial of opportunity is normalized. Okay. Dogs are animals. They're sometimes large animals. They have pointy teeth, and humans evolved in environments where this was a significant hazard. That's why we think there is sort of an underlying, deeply emotional fear of dogs among all people. It's the same response to evolutionary pressures that made us more inclined to fear snakes and spiders and to crave fat, salt, and sugar. So it's super understandable that people have an alligator brain level fear of dogs. We do empathize with owners who find play scary or don't understand what play is about, but we think it's our job to help owners better understand play and meet their dog's needs. And it's really partly why we find it difficult to draw a distinction in dog conflict resolution and self-behavior and self-defense behavior the way we do with humans. We are going to be talking about the fact that most people argue, some people occasionally throw things, but we readily distinguish this from aggravated assault, domestic violence, and murder. But with dogs, we lose our cookies and it all goes into one basket: aggression. A dog with an excellent mouth and tons of protracted warnings is not the same thing as a dog who mutilates when he bites. But the former, the dog equivalent of arguing, is routinely euthanized because it upsets people. And importantly, it upsets plenty of professionals who are unable to tease apart their natural emotional reaction to dogs issuing threats from any objective assessment of risk. And this, to my mind, is partly at the root of the anti-dog play fad. Pushes buttons in people, and the similar buttons when dogs play, when they engage in conflict management, and when puppies play. It upsets them, and so they limit it, and they come up with justifications for which there is no evidence. Okay, with that as sort of the ground here, shall we start with puppies? What do we think about the idea that puppy classes should eschew free play and more emphasize manners and calmness and focus on the owner? Anybody?
I'd be glad to jump in here because it's such a huge piece of what I do. It's probably, in terms of our classwork, the most important thing I do is having play, having group play in our puppy classes. It's why I do puppy classes at all. And so the idea that we wouldn't get these puppies playing, interacting with one another is, to me, I do think that's malpractice to have puppies that aren't getting those opportunities. We're really thoughtful about how we do it. It's not just a free for all. We do an orientation where we cover what play looks like, what good play looks like, how we intervene, when we intervene, and why. And we talk about what play is for. We really prep our clients for what they're going to see and even how they can participate in the wrangling, which is probably a discussion for a different time. But this is something we prep our clients for. I will tell you that not only is it the most important thing for the puppies, those socialization periods in each class. And for our clients, they love it more than anything. They will come back and again for classes just so they can continue to do that play, which is super important. But we're not just willy-nilly throwing them together. We are literally being super thoughtful, educating them. And then if we have fearful dogs, if we do have, so to me, this is one of the most important things. We might have a class of 8 or 10 puppies, and inevitably we might have 1 or 2 that are a little soft, a little shy. And instead of blowing them out of the water, instead of saying, well, they're too afraid to play, what we do is we protect them. We don't force them to play. We meet them where they are. Thanks to the Academy education, we have a really rock solid protocol for helping them navigate this, to getting them more comfortable. And we encourage the owners to really not push back on this, to really come with us on this little journey. I can promise that 9 times out of 10, the puppy that was most fearful, most worried, most nervous on week 1 of puppy play, halfway through the class, they are the most joyful, pro-social puppies that are having the time of their lives.
You mean like week 3 or week 4?
Oh, week 3, sometimes as quick as week 2, because we'll do a couple of play sessions per class. We usually see the first one, they're a little bit nervous. This is the usual trajectory for your standard fearful, nervous puppy. The first play session on week 1, they're a little nervous. We immediately pull them from the club, put them in the pub, is what we like to say. And we get them very, very comfortable. First with just watching the puppies. When the puppies come kind of near to where they are, then I'll take the most nuanced, pro-social, but gentle pup, and I'll place that with the more fearful one. And usually in the second play session, we're seeing that fearful pup come out of their shell. Usually by the next week or the week after, the pup's playing with 3 or 4 pups. And by the end of the class, by graduation, they are literally like Belle of the Ball or Big Man on campus. We like
So
to
a
say.
puppy that may have grown up fearful of other dogs grows up socialized to other dogs. This is important.
Yep. And they come back for other courses, for intermediate, for CGC as the years go on, and they've continued to play, they've continued to do well. And I always wonder what would have happened to that pup who was terrified of other pups.
And do these pups become like play maniacs who can't focus, can never do obedience, and are unwalkable on leash and so on?
No, because we're also doing, skills training so that we can DRI them when we need them to, okay, we can play now, and now we're going to kind of come this way. You know what I mean? No, they don't.
It kind of annoys me because if you're a trainer and you can't train an adult dog to do obedience, then go back to school. But
if you need to have asocial dogs in order to train them
to do what you need to do, then something's wrong with your
how incompetent are you?
Yeah. Whereas when we're looking at puppies, we're in a time of the puppies' lives where their brains are, different and ready to sort of understand what's safe in their world. So taking away an opportunity to allow a dog to feel comfortable and gain skills and have knowledge about how to interact with their conspecifics, to whom they should be social because they are a social species, it just...
And with whom dogs have all these built-in sort of ways to play, to interact, to negotiate and dance with each other, to resolve conflicts. They have all this software. And we, for some reason, it's not the guardians, it's not the dogs, it's some trainers who seem to be afraid.
Yeah, I was interested when we were setting up for this panel and we were talking about puppy class, just hearing from people who teach a ton of puppy classes, Jean and Lisa and Emily. I don't know if you teach puppy classes or not.
I don't generally even work with puppies so much now, unless there's like issues, but I do love puppy play. Yes.
Yeah. So hearing from you that again and again and again, you're hearing from people who take your classes that their favorite parts was play, puppy classes. So it's not the dog guardians who are saying, no. It's not the puppies. The trainers. It's us. It's our community. Yeah.
And I have 20 to 30 puppies come through these doors every single week, year after year, So this is not a small sample size that I'm talking about. This is a large sample size. And we don't just willy-nilly do it. We're really thoughtful. There are people who are higher intervention biased than us and people who are lower. We're making sure that no dog leaves here worse for the wear. No puppy leaves here worse for the wear when it comes to socializing with other dogs. And that's really important, knowing how to conduct puppy play sessions, knowing where and when to intervene, but never eliminating or limiting a puppy's exposure to conspecifics. It's just, to me, that's malpractice. I can't fathom the
In a
dog.
social species.
Yeah, without puppy play in these classes, these dogs would absolutely be missing out on a critical
Why
development.
do we think is going on with these trainers? Is it, I mean, is it you just fear of dogs, you know, puppies are playing or dogs are playing, and it is, you know, if you don't understand what's going on, you don't know what to look for, it looks very intense. Sometimes it's flashing of teeth. The stuff of play is the 4 F's of animal behavior. Sometimes, you know, is it that the dogs, is it the puppy or the dog is not focused on the handler? Is it that sort of, they're not, is it the intensity, the lack of calm, which is sort of, you know, though everybody's sort of like, the dog has to be calm at all times. Is it the stuff? What do we think is going on with these trainers?
Oh, probably all of the above. I mean, tick, 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 checked all the boxes. I think people are afraid of, you know, dogs who are excited. We've talked about this in previous panels. It's, you know, they're loud, they're over the top, they're not listening to us, they're pinning each other, growling, snarling, snapping, like chasing. You know, it looks in many ways like the
If you
real
don't
thing.
know,
And
yeah.
I think if you don't know, and I get it, a lot of people, I work with a lot of clients who avoid play because they just don't get it, they just don't know, or they've been told in the past to avoid parks and things like that. A lot of people come into sessions with me and apologize, like, I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't, but I go to the dog park. And so I think it's all of the above. I think, you know, trainers are just people at the end of the day. And I think many of them are experiencing a little bit of hesitation around some of these, like what we consider over the top. And I try to avoid that term because I don't think they're over the top. I think they're normal. But it's this avoidance of behaviors where a dog might not be focused, might seem, you know, over, you know, snarling, snapping, barking, whatever it might be. It's overwhelming to people. And I get it. Like, I've got some over the top players. I mean, I've got the snarls, the snaps. I've got Mozzie, who is, you know, she's very cute, but buckle your seatbelt. She plays rough, you know, like Lisa also comes from, you know, the pit bull world, like I do in the past. And, you know, they're intense players. Yeah. But it's also just, I would really encourage trainers to look at it as a tool. I mean, it's a tool that I use for fear cases, for the dogs who are struggling and need help. I mean, Mozzie, one of the most important things for her when I brought her home, and she was that little fearful dog, was play. It was what I focus on every single day. Get her out and playing with Zelda, running, feeling good. It's an indicator of good welfare. Like, it gave me a gauge on how she was feeling or what was, you know, freaking her out in the environment. It just let her run and feel good. So it doesn't have to be avoided. It can be actually used to our benefit to help us with these dogs.
And the admonition that the dog should only play with us because we should be the source of all things. The dog shouldn't play with other dogs, that somehow something bad is going to come of that, or that it's better if we are the center of all things to the dog. It really strikes me as kind of old school thinking of, you know, late 1970s and 1980s kind of, you know, or even earlier dog training where, you know, it's sort of an insecurity that gets, you know, brought up in people when the dog is not revolving around them.
Yeah.
I don't get like the calm thing. I don't particularly, I mean, yes, I love it when dogs are calm. My dogs when they're chill.
Convenient, isn't it?
It's gratifying because then I'm like, I'm meeting their needs. And also it's just kind of nice to have chill dogs. It's not nice to have dogs who are playing on your lap sometimes, you know?
Right.
But I also love it when my dogs are active. So I recently heard about someone who is giving instructions to other trainers about how to run puppy classes. And there was no free play. It was not allowed. And instead there was the focus on like mat work and calming down stays. And I feel like I can't even come up with words at how disgusting I find that, you know, like these are puppies, they're babies, puppies should be playing. We're giving them
recess. Yeah, where's recess at school? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's super disturbing to me. The idea that we're going to get these baby organisms under 16 weeks of age that the focus of the training is going to be to have them lay down and stay and focus on us. These are babies. They've been on the planet a matter of weeks. And that's what we're thinking. That's not even a skill first of all, it's not a skill I would teach for any reason for my own dogs. I just wouldn't. If I'm being super truthful here, I would never teach my own dogs like super calm and focus. Listen, they have me for the hours that they have me, and we're going to have fun. And that's what that is. But for people who want their dogs to focus, great. Let's teach them when it matters. Because once that window closes, of that really critical developmental stage, that's closed. There's not a lot of do-overs. I tell my clients all the time,
manners is not time sensitive.
At 14 to 16 weeks. Can we address things like fear? Can we address things like, it's like pushing an elephant up a hill? Yes, we can still, but right now, during this stage where they're sponges for good experiences and sitting ducks for bad experiences, here's the stuff that we need to focus on. And one of the primary things is socialization, and a huge component of really good socialization is going to involve play. And for anybody to not put the focus on it, I hear a lot of talk about not letting puppies play high. You got to put them on leash and hold them down low. Listen, if my two puppies didn't play high,
that makes no sense.
Yeah, they look like the Wild Kingdom. Remember the beginning with the two, I don't know what the hell that was, with the two rams. That's what my dogs look like when they play, right up on their back heel. And they have
arbitrary.
Yeah.
And imagine having someone else tell you the way that you enjoy playing is wrong.
It's not acceptable because they
not okay to watch the TV series that you watch or the movies that you watch, or
even though it doesn't hurt anybody.
Your dogs are only allowed to play quiet and calm. But listen, that's not the play style for all dogs. I get not wanting a more Tarzan-y kind of clubber, to go down, a chill, soft pupper. Of course, we would never have that happen. But we can absolutely pair the clubbers together and let them have the time of their lives.
And we can also let dogs set their own limits.
Help the puppers become
lovers. Yes, dogs are much more. I think some of these trainers they doubt how capable dogs are. So let's talk a little bit about sort of conflict resolution and this preference in some trainers over complete lifetime sequestration, except from like maybe a small handful of dogs, that they find that better than species normal conflict resolution, that dogs sometimes growl each other off or have a squabble that's non-injurious. Is that do you think that's just strictly fear of dogs?
Yes, I would say that's much more fear of dogs than any sort of, I want the dog to focus on me thing. I think, and like you said in the beginning, Jean, we are all, as humans, scared of predators with big pointy teeth. And when they do things like fight, it's like they're using their teeth and their mouths and their enamel.
It pushes buttons.
And it's scary, and fights are scary, even intense play.
They are scary.
It sort of intense play feels like a fight, which feels like aggression, which feels like, again, fights are aggression. But I mean,
so we do want to empathize with that, except professionals need to sort of look at the playing field in a more objective fashion.
There's two communities that we were talking to here. One is dog guardians who might be legitimately scared, and it's our job to help them, if their dog is a safe player with a good mouth and would benefit from dog play. And then there's our colleagues who, if they're allowing their own biases against normal dog play to affect how they're teaching their clients, then that's a different message, I think.
Yeah, and it's we learn about this in the academy, like rare event reporting. It does happen where bad things happen with dogs together. But it's very rare. Like most dogs, when they're paired together, if they do have a situation that that looks like a fight to us, and many times it's not a full-blown assault, like you said at the beginning, Jean. It's an argument. Like if Christy and I got into an argument right now, we're not likely to harm each other or hurt each other. We're just having a verbal argument. They just argue a little bit different than the way we do, so it looks like the real thing. And then we hear people say, well, if I hadn't pulled them apart, bad things would have happened, when that's also not. It can look that way, but that's not necessarily the case. And it's very, very few and far between where dogs actually are going to hurt each other. And even much more rare that dogs will actually end up, you know, sending each other to the vet or something serious like that. And so it can, like, again, it really can look like the real thing, but that doesn't mean that because we've heard the one story or a friend of a friend had a dog who went to the park and bad things happened, or as a trainer working with cases where we are prone to see more, you know, issues because that's what we're working with. That doesn't mean that we should be suggesting to our clients that nobody goes to the park or nobody has dog play, because that's our bias. That's not actually the most likely outcome of putting two dogs together, even if they are awkward players.
And failing to sort of, Christy, you've talked about sort of trade-offs, and sometimes I think trainers were failing to see the other side of the trade-off, that if, yes, we can avoid any possibility of a dog ever getting dinged or a dog ever briefly being sort of like, whoa, you know, that was a bit much, or conflict resolution. And we can avoid all that by sequestering dogs and saying no dog parks for you. But there's another side, which is there is sort of a cost.
Yeah, exactly. Then you have dogs who aren't getting play, so they're not getting the enrichment and exercise of play.
And skills.
They start having behavior problems. And those are the kind of behavior problems that our clients find very pesty, you know, and then they call up a trainer who's not on our team, potentially. Like, I don't think that that's an unusual trajectory. I heard from my first trainer, you know.
And Lisa, you've received dogs. Am I right? And we were talking before, dogs who got the counsel from a rescue or from a trainer, from somebody, was to sequester, and then how did those dogs turn out?
Yeah, we've seen that a lot with rescue dogs, dogs and rescues, where the dogs are fostered in homes, where we, you know, in the past, had trainers who would say, you know, dogs get into, and again, it can, you know, as Emily said, it can look very intense. It can definitely push buttons, where we might have, you know, 2, 6 or 7 month olds get into a squabble, you know, and it's intense and it's loud and it's teeth and it's yelling and, you know, and you know, because they were uncomfortable with dogs making those displays, they would tell us, do not ever let that dog have access to another dog. They need to go to a dog only home. You know, this dog will kill another dog. It's like very way blown out of proportion responses.
So the one squabble they think is predictive of eventual.
Yes. Oh, this dog is, you know, gamey. This dog is this dog is aggressive. And so we didn't know better. This was years ago, and we didn't know better. And so we would do what we were, you know, what was suggested. And these dogs would not get access. They'd be sequestered from other dogs, not just in play, but, you know, in homes. It would be crate and rotate, or they'd go to a dog, you know, a no dog home where they're the only dog. And once I got into the academy years ago, and as I started going through the curriculum, I started talking to the head of one of those rescues, who's a good friend of mine, Jen, and we decided we'd felt, you know, there were dogs that for 5 or 6, 7 years had been sequestered based on the recommendations of a trainer. So one by one, we decided to give them an opportunity. These were dogs that had never injured another dog. They'd gotten into arguments, dust ups, snark offs. Yes, they looked intense, but there never had been any injury. And they were 6 or 7 months old, and then stuck in a home without other dogs and told no dogs. So we did this. We got the dogs out. We were very thoughtful. We were very careful. We used well-padded pro-social dogs. And without a single exception, those dogs now are able to play, and they were wonderful players. Yeah,
so they had that 6 or 7 year stretch where they were
zero other dog play. And of course, you know, and this of course could lead into, you know, these were also not surprisingly dogs with pretty explosive leash reactivity, barrier frustration.
Right.
And of course, that only fed into, oh, see, if that dog got off leash, what would they do? When indeed what we were seeing was barrier frustration. And what is one of our greatest protocols for working on barrier frustration, what's one of the things that can help in the training is to, of course, allow some off-leash play, let them saturate a little bit on play.
Deflate the balloon.
The skills. So the academy changed a lot of lives in that rescue.
And so far, I mean, you know, needless to say, I mean, no deaths, no serious injuries, no, I mean,
no,
not that can't happen. I mean, occasionally it happens. And I think there are people who that happens once and they just at all costs And that's
Yeah.
important because there's a cost. At all costs, they want to avoid that ever happening again.
But there's another element there that I think, so I've seen injuries, fights. I know they
Yeah,
exist.
me too.
And I've certainly heard tell of so many. I used to answer the hotline for a pit bull rescue, and people would call with scary stories. So that makes us a little bit perhaps more susceptible,
Of
more
course.
up for these stories, a little bit more susceptible to having a high intervention bias because it feels very salient. But that's where it's critical that professional trainers that are advising owners, rescues, fill in the blank, they have their biases in check, because it was so easy for us to get sucked into that. Oh, you're right. Oh my God. And then
Never. Yeah.
and that
No dog ever. Yeah.
that impacted the lives of countless dogs. And I, that's just in one rescue. And like I said, we very different views now, very different approaches now. At the time we were doing what felt very, when you're told this dog will kill another dog, you know what I mean? That's terrifying.
Right. It feels irresponsible to do anything but right. Yeah. So talk a little bit about sort of, we were talking ahead of time about hard play. So not sort of, bucolic, gentle, play, but, dogs who really want to, like you were saying, they want to party hard, and sort of that's harder for people to tolerate.
Scarier, right?
It is.
And Emily, you see that too. It is scarier for people. And listen, even when they're just playing, it can be scary, but when it sometimes spills over into a true snark off. Right. So sometimes rough play can spill into an actual argument.
But that's okay. That's okay. And everybody recovers, nobody dies. Yeah.
Yep. And I do think it's really hard, but also pointing those things out. Hard play being different than the argument, but Emily, you were talking about that before. What, the difference between two dogs that just really love to play the way they do. It's not comfortable for a lot of people, but that's where we come in to normalize what normal play can look like. And it's not what we're seeing by trainers. We're saying they're being non-permissive about
teach people play. This is trending. This is something which is trending in a way that is worrisome. This is normal.
Yeah. The hard play is like going closer up the ladder of like looking more like the real thing. It's harder for people to see. Is that okay? Is it not okay? Yeah. But it's okay. It can be okay. I mean, if you have cattle dogs or you have had pit bulls or you have, my border collies are like, I get it. It does look like the real thing. But when we say that that's abnormal, or we suggest that just because it's going, that they're playing harder or faster or rougher or more, Mossy does somersaults and she's like, head over, like she's flying through the air. But what are they doing there? I watch what they're doing, and there's give and take, there's play bows, they enjoy it. And why would I try and stop that or bring it in?
Because the intensity just for some people is intolerable.
Sometimes even for me, I can handle dog argument. I've been through dog fights. I love rough and tumble play. And there's even times where I go like, ooh, is that? And then I just watch and they will tell us what's going on, and they will tell us when it isn't play. And it's okay also for them to be awkward. It's okay for them, sometimes to tip over. Like dogs don't have to be perfect and fit into, this perfect low play to be okay. And the fact that we package anything other than sort of perfect, calm play as a behavior problem is devastating to me.
And that somehow it's good. It's a slippery slope that if they are allowed to do that, they're going to do more and more of it. And it's the whole world is going to sort of spin out of control. Can we talk a little bit about the opposite? It is.
More experience is going to.
It is ironic.
You're going to learn better social skills when other dogs say that's too much. And
can we talk about sports people? I mean, there's a certain, I don't want to tar everybody with the same brush, because I used to do dog sports galore, but there's sort of this a tendency that says some sports people who, because dogs who are well socialized to other dogs, and sometimes even to people, are more attracted to other dogs, that makes an inconvenient distraction. And that if the dog is asocial and disinterested in other dogs, that somehow is going to end up scoring you more points than the obedience ring, or just, I mean, that seems to me kind of irresponsible. That's not okay. Does it strike anybody else as sort of like, just pushes like, ooh, I'm not comfortable with that rationale.
I have this client right now, actually, who has he's about a year old, young herding breed dog, super perfectly social with other dogs, loves them, is a little bit frustrated when he sees them and he's on leash and he can't get to them. And all of the sport, and this is a very novice agility dog, I should say, like not a competitive dog. But all of the sport people told this guardian, you need to don't let him play with dogs, because if you let him play with dogs, he's going to become, obsessed or addicted to it. And then he will lose focus on you. And the way that we fixed it was lots of dog play, and then taking him to these places where he was leashed so that he was no longer, frustrated about wanting to get to them. And they were old news. Yeah. And he's doing great in novice agility and is doing just fine. So again, sometimes I think we're just coming at it the wrong angle. We're seeing it as in so many, like we talk about fetch, play, dog, sniffing, all of these
legal
things.
outlets.
Pandora's box.
If we let them do it, it's going to be bad. When in actual fact, just let them do it, and then they won't care about it so much in the next.
And then the welfare
for the rest of the
implication. I do think there's a welfare implication to disallowing, an animal who would love to do a certain activities, and you can't do that activity.
And you're stacking the deck against you. Like if you are trying to, if you're trying to work a dog who is excited to see another dog and get him to be calm on leash, and you're not giving him access to the dogs and letting him saturate on them and become bored, you're making your job harder, because he still wants to get to that dog.
I think sometimes these people, what they want to do is from the get-go, sort of from puppyhood, they want to fail to socialize these dogs, so the dogs are asocial, a little bit uncomfortable around other dogs, because it's that slight sort of fearfulness or reticence about dogs
convenient to them
is useful, and that's the part that I think is welfare implicated.
Imagine if we did that to people. So if I talk to my friends who are anxious in social situations and said, hey, how would you feel if I told you your parents made you anxious in social situations because it was more convenient for them? How would you feel? Now that your life, you have anxiety all the time, and I'm going to, and then they take these dogs to places where there are other dogs and tons of people, and just, I feel myself losing my words. It makes me so upset that
then when you're awkward, we're going to take you out. Yes. You're not allowed to engage anymore once you're slightly awkward.
To win, not to save babies, to win ribbons. Like,
that's right. Yeah.
There's something there that,
But also I think, like Jean said, the welfare implication, the idea that this organism is supposed to go through its entire life. This is where I get why people say they're captive animals, but even captive animals get to be with conspecifics.
It's in the 5 freedoms.
Right?
If you're a factory farm, you're supposed to really kind of let the chickens, see another chicken sometimes. It's very, very basic right that we're disregarding.
It's heartbreaking to me. I do get dogs that come into adult classes that are, 3, 4, 5 years old, that they come in and interestingly enough, still really want to interact. Some come in fearful because they did it, but you'll still see these dogs.
Even if they don't play.
There's another one like me and you're so close. And I'll ask them.
They're interested. Yeah, they're fascinated. Yeah. I mean, Brian is 13. He plays with like one dog in 20 maybe, but he loves going to the dog park because he wants to sniff butts and he wants to pee over other dogs, but he wants to be busy and go around and watch what's going on and be sort of in the scene. And it's so crystal clear that he's enjoying himself. I mean, he loves going there. He gets excited to go there. Every sort of sign that he wants to be there, even though most of the time he doesn't play, he's just busy. He's just like, okay, now I'm around the dogs and I'm watching and I'm sniffing butts galore. Occasionally he'll court a dog, I mean, nothing intrusive, but well, I'm Brian, there's a dog actually that dislikes him, that he, she I mean, people are going to lose their cookies about this, but she's about his size. She attacks him on sight, but he's very, very, classically masculine insofar he's got good sort of tolerance for rebuffing. He's got kind of that courtship tolerance where, she goes, and then he goes, how about now? Do you like me now? And she's like, I fucking hate you. And he's like, do you like me now? His tail is up and he's wagging and he's, I'm monitoring for sort of welfare problems, is he getting me made sure, but he's not. And so this whole the dog park phobia, let's just talk a little bit about that, because dog parks can feel, I think sometimes the argument is that it's uncontrolled, that it's unknown quantity dogs, it's a free for all, nobody's paying attention, everybody's just drinking coffee and talking about the stock market. And so dogs are going to be creamed and steamrolled. And I just want to say for the record that, so I've attended dog parks in Montreal with clients, with my dogs. I've attended dog parks here with Buffy, with my dog. I've gone just to watch dogs. If there's all this carnage, how come I haven't seen it? So is it that people are just unlucky where they're going? Because it seems to me there's a certain amount of self-selection, that the dogs who attend dog parks are the ones who enjoy dog parks.
And I think we can separate dogs into categories. We have relatively large, complex human brains. We can understand that.
Not all dogs like dog parks. Doesn't mean that all dogs don't like dog parks.
Are safe in dog parks. Like if they have an injurious bite, then they shouldn't be at dog parks without a good puzzle.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
we can still say dog parks are great for lots of dogs.
Right.
If you have a human who their dog gets on the end of the leash, pulls the human into the dog park, then plays why can't we just believe the dog? Why can't we just say, you're an adult organism with your own desires? I can believe you that you know what you want. I don't know better than you.
I mean, is it again? I mean, to raise this specter of the dog's not revolving around the person. Is it that again, or is it the stuff of play, the 4 Fs? Is it?
Yeah.
I think it could be all, again, it could be, I think it can be all of the above. I mean, if you go to the dog park and your dog does have one scuffle, or you see that one dog that appears to be out of control, and then you don't know what you're seeing, and maybe you label it as like, oh, my dog almost died at the dog park today. Of course, you're going to avoid the dog park. So I think that like sort of rare event reporting thing again, where we hear one story or we have one bad experience and it kind of paints it with this wide brush. But again, this is also where hiring someone to help you, hiring someone to tease out what is right. I mean, we can learn. I started out, years ago, I was very afraid of arguments, fights, and all of those things. And I've really worked hard to not be there. And now I'm so relaxed about it that you might want to check my pulse if there's any kind of scuffle at the dog park. So, hiring someone to help you, but I think it comes from, we don't know the dog. We don't understand what we're seeing. The trainer doesn't. We've heard these stories. The trainer maybe has said, don't go. And then we go and there's like a growl, yikes, I better not go back again. Yeah. So
there's good free resources out there. I mean, people might want to check out, there's videos by Mark Beckhoff, who does a really superb job of unpacking the stuff of play, what makes play, janesigsworth.com. It has a couple of superb videos on, what to look for, what's a red herring and what to look for in play. So there are resources out there that are authoritative and that are accurate, and they're not just sort of, just a trainer who's had some bad experiences and generalizing that.
And at the very least, start with, if your dog has a friend, keep up that, where you're comfortable,
Yes.
Make sure that you're not just pulling out of all things, start where you're comfortable. Maybe you do go for a walk or go to the dog park with that, set up a play date or
go at a
something
time
like
when
that.
it's less busy, I mean, there's a lot, there are shades of gray, and we do want to, again, empathize with people, with guardians who are afraid. It's no fun being afraid. It's no fun seeing animals with pointy teeth using them. I mean, that pushes buttons in us.
And you don't want your dog to get hurt, or for God's sake,
Of course not.
So I do understand. By the way, I was one of those owners too. I was just thinking, when Pantouf was a puppy, was a pug. When he was a puppy, I had just 2 dogs. It was my golden retriever and my little pug. And there was this place we used to call the puppy pond. There weren't dog parks, but that's where everybody brought their dogs to the park, big pond. And I had this tiny pug and I carried him everywhere. And one day somebody said to me, why don't you ever put him down on the ground? Because of course my big golden romping through the water. I didn't even realize I had been doing that to that pug. And this was like a million years ago. I was in my 20s.
But completely well-meaning.
Yeah. In no way did I even realize I was afraid to put my tiny puppy on the ground with all these dogs. I didn't even know I was afraid.
And we may not, I mean, we don't want to throw small puppies into adult dog parks. I mean, nobody's saying do that.
Well, this wasn't
Nobody's
even
saying
a
put dogs
puppy,
who
it was
don't
just
like
a-
dogs in with other, I mean, dogs who are fearful of other dogs who are not socialized, dogs with bad mouths. Nobody is saying that. But what
Yeah.
we are saying is there's a huge swath of dogs who would, with the opportunity, want to interact with and play with dogs, and would be safe around dogs, but are denied the opportunity. That's the population that we're talking about.
And
And
I
it's
would like to push
life
back
issue.
a bit against the whole absolutely no injuries ever thing. And I know we brought this up in the fetch, but like I came from the sled dog world.
Do you fear for your life, Christy? Because you're gonna
You have
get
a lot of
internet
dogs and
destroyed.
Well, like when I get, so I think
And you're talking minor injuries.
yeah, like I came from sled dog sports, and sled dogs are very scrappy, and mushers tend to be pretty sanguine about it. And like I remember some relatively big injuries that would definitely, you know, as a trainer, we would say, oh, well, this dog needs to be muzzled. But sled dog people would just like they'd have skins, they just staple it closed. The dog will go on their merry way and be happy to play again with that same dog. You know what I'm saying?
They're well padded, yeah.
Yeah, and also they're like, playing with you is fun enough that the fact that I got a scratch on my face,
Yeah.
like I came into the academy and my dogs all have a lot of scars on their face from fights. And I didn't know that that was bad. I was
but that's unusual.
So I think like the idea that your dogs should never have a scratch on their face after a fight or a spar. They should never, like, you know.
It is a little bit, let's never cook dinner because occasionally we had a kitchen injury.
And like I recently came into playing a sport as an adult and I get injured in this sport and I would fight somebody to go back to play that sport because it's that much fun for me. So
yeah, I used to do martial arts. Like, what was I thinking? You know, and you do like roller derby.
And so I think we can say, wow, the dog got a little scratch on their ear and there was quite a bit of blood, but it was just, we don't have to say no more dog parks ever for anybody. We don't have to say no more dog parks. We need to
acknowledge that for some people that their hair is catching fire right now as you're talking.
Yes.
Like sometimes the product of fun is there's a little injury, you know, like we can be okay with
not
that.
Everybody has to start with that, you know, because I'm just so worried about people's hair catching fire, you know, like but I'm with you. I mean, I for the record, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Or even like awkward moments. I mean, like Mozzie and Griffin never puncture each other, but there's times where somebody will let out a yelp because you know they are physical,
stop.
And then they both kind of stop, and then you know they kind of stare at each other, and then they sniff each other, and then they go right back into play. And I don't pull them out and panic and you know stop them from playing. I mean, just like there's been times where when I was a child, you know, maybe I was, you know, accidentally offended during play, but you get over it and it doesn't mean that there's a big behavior problem that needs to be fixed or that the dogs can't be together. Play isn't always perfect. These guys are living, breathing, you know, animals. They all have their different styles. We talked about it earlier. I mean, Stormy, my new dog, is insanely awkward when she plays. And I think a lot of people would pull her from play because she kind of has that style that used to be like, people will call it like fun police. She kind of like rushes in and, you know, she kind of darts in and like, you know, kind of muzzle punches somebody and then bounces back out again. That's okay. She's just playing the way that she knows how to play and nobody's offended by it. They don't have
We're going to monitor
perfect.
to make sure part of our responsibility as trainers is to make sure the dogs get opportunities, but also to make sure that no dogs are being rendered fearful. You know, I mean, but that should go without saying, but we should say it because I think that could be, somebody might level that at us as a straw man argument.
Yes, no, and I'm not ever suggesting that. Like, you know, she just has an awkward play style. We kind of laugh about it. She gets to play in her own way. And Mozzie and Griffin they don't even notice.
Yes,
I don't even think that they're aware.
Dogs.
Yeah.
And they're your dogs that know her well and know she's an awkward player. So that should be said as well. It's one thing when folks are playing, like they're your family dogs. And so they're together day in and day out. And the other dogs know, oh, this way she plays.
To see the juxtaposition of the age, so the agency obsession with people sometimes is embodied in the same person with the don't let the dog play, and that strikes me as sort of discordant, like internally inconsistent.
Yeah. But I think you had it right from the beginning. It was it's what upsets me. So I don't like intensity. I don't like
right. Or one of the 4 F's. I don't like
me.
chase. I don't like wrestling. I don't like mounting. I don't like,
But I
going
do
high.
want the dog to feel uncomfortable, but I also don't want them doing things that make me uncomfortable. It's a very hard brain to live in.
Imagine if the whole, the entire universe had to only do things that made me comfortable.
Oh, it'd be lovely, actually.
I think we can sort of say it's okay to train dogs if they're kind of bad at playing. We have techniques and tools to train them to play.
Yeah. I used to do that for a living. Yeah.
Like my 2 large livestock guardian dogs, at the beginning of every walk, for some reason, they play so intensely that it tips over into a fight most of the time. And they're so big. So
they still like each other. Yeah.
I call them out to play when they get to that point, and then they go on to play beautifully. And I don't feel like I don't have to sequester them, but I also don't have to just let them fight.
Yeah, there are options here.
We can train.
Hit the reset button. You're up here right now, and I need you to be down here.
Yeah.
And it should be said too, like when you have dogs in a home or dogs that play together often, they do develop their sort of own style. I mean, when I have Mozzie and Griffin together, Griffin very rarely, unless nobody's paying attention to him, he doesn't do the beautiful play bow anymore. He just kind of play bounces, a wide-legged little stance.
Abbreviated shorthand.
Yeah, and then everyone goes, oh yeah, we know what that means, and they play. But if he was out of the house and playing with an unknown dog, he's much more crisp in he's very obvious. Oh, there's my play bow, because he doesn't have the history. He can adjust, and they're friends, they're housemates, they live and sleep, they're sleeping together right now under the desk. It's, so they may not even fit the sort of mold of what we think about as perfect play. They probably fit that even less, because they live together and they play together like for at least an hour every day. So they're very used to each other and how to sort of interact. But it can look, it can really just not, if it doesn't look crisp and clean, it can really, I think, get people's hackles up. So
Foster, if you had like one piece of advice, I mean, maybe I shouldn't limit to one, that you were going to sort of give to a guardian or trainer who's watching this and just a little bit considering their position. So if they've got a very strong, dog park's bad, scary, and they've been sort of told that, or they've had a bad, what might be their first step if they're considering, sort of reconsidering this position? What might be like their first thing they might try? Anybody?
I would say, because there was a time that I was really uncomfortable too. Understanding play, understanding body language, get really good at recognizing body language and not
what matter, what's a red herring, what doesn't matter, and what does matter. Yeah.
Activity shifts,
meta signaling, self-handicapping
play. Yep. Reciprocal play. I'll pin you, then you pin me. I'll chase you, then you chase me. All of those things, getting good. And Jane's we should probably put up a link for that. Jane's videos are real good at recognizing those things. Start recognizing that and looking at your own bias. I also have always
label it a bias rather than truth.
Bias. Yeah. But I did fight through it, and I did it by information, taking in factual, solid information on what these things look like, what to look for, how to intervene, and just to please give consideration. And I'm not saying this to owners, although owners are also, I give a lot of my clients Jane's video, because I think it's helpful for them if they want to continue to have their dogs play. But trainers, recognize your own bias. And I know that's a much more difficult thing to do than say, but you can get past that. I'm not the only one who's gotten past it. There's been a bunch of people, Mary Thompson and Suzanne. There's been a bunch of us that came in a little bit
very afraid, biased,
but still really fight against that, because we do recognize the quality of life for our client dogs and for all dogs matters. To be sequestered away from your own species because we're uncomfortable with intensity or with styles of play that we don't like. I'm sorry, that's a welfare issue. And so the difference, I was talking earlier about those dogs that were sequestered for years, that we decided to, because a lot of the time fosters of the rescue end up adopting, especially if they're dogs that aren't easily adoptable because we've been told by well-intentioned but undereducated trainers that, you know, oh, this is a dangerous dog. Getting those dogs out to play, when I tell you without fail, every single one of those dogs are now playing. They're playing well. Some are a little bit
It's
awkward.
it's a data point that people watching should just consider.
Yes. And just if you're not sure, you know, there are good resources, like you were saying. There's good resources for you to kind of go, you know, arguing is not assault. Our comfort level is not necessarily a good lie detector. It's not necessarily a good barometer of good play. And really look into really reading play well by, you know, body language and understanding the good stuff of play and when it breaks down, when to be concerned and how to intervene if it does.
Anybody else got a piece of that was like just perfect? Anybody else got their first step for somebody?
I mean, that was everything that I would say. And I would say, like, look at, like Lisa was saying, look for the play bows, look for the shift in who's chasing who, and the self handicapping is by far my favorite dog behavior. It melts my heart every time. The idea that this big dog, or I mean, Griffin does it. Mozzie could probably, if she wanted to, like, whoop his butt, but he always lays down to play with her, and it's because he sees himself as bigger and stronger, and it just melts my heart every time. Or big dogs doing it with like little dogs or puppies. But look for those things rather than kind of focusing on the stuff that seems intense.
They're not attending to me right now.
Exactly. And they may be intense, but does it trend better? Are we seeing more play bows? Are we seeing, you know, count how, like, it's not just about a snapshot. We always say that. Super important. And trainers, even who are uncomfortable with play, say that it's not a snapshot. Yes, they were stiff for a second, but then they, you know what I mean? It's pulled over. And then is the play getting smoother, or is it ratcheting up even worse? You know, sorry.
It can feel like a step up.
I'm very passionate about this. I'm so sorry.
No,
yeah, great. I mean, I think my other piece of advice for trainers is to, you know, check your bias and refer if you need to. I mean, it's like we were talking beforehand about, like, I don't work dog baby cases, and I don't work dog baby cases because I'm so afraid of the what could happen, because I don't really understand babies too well, that I will always err on the side of, like, protect the baby at all costs, get the dog out of the house and protect the baby.
I refer separation anxiety. I refer all separation anxiety.
Yeah,
I
so
like,
I refer that, it's because I know that I will recommend things that aren't necessary because I'm afraid of it. And so I know it can sound bizarre, but it could be that you are just not in the right place to work dog cases.
Or puppy classes, by the way.
Yeah,
I teach a lot of different classes, from reactive dog classes to canine good citizen classes and basics and intermediate. By far and away, the hardest, most important, most critical, get it right class is those kindergarten classes. I love when people go, oh, I'm not educated, but I'm just going to do kindergarten. I'm just going to do puppies. Like, no, please, for the love of God, I'd rather see you do a reactive.
Yep. The responsibility is so huge.
And the knowledge that you need to recognize body language, to understand,
and to triage and prioritize the curriculum properly.
And never have you seen a room full of more anxious owners. You know, they line up after kindergarten class because they're like, oh my God, is there, you know, they're worried they're getting it right. That might be my orientation telling them all this stuff is critical. They really want to get it right. And it's hard being a puppy parent, right? It's hard. And so anxious owners, puppies in a critical stage, for the love of God, get it right. Get it right. Telling them to lay down and focus on you should not be the fish to fry. And I see it all.
Aside from anything else, you can add that at any age.
Yeah, why would you even make it part of a puppy class? For the love of God, there's limited time.
It's not time sensitive. Yeah.
Oh, but there's a lot of stuff.
I'm dying to know what what Christy's.
What would be your first step for a trainer or an owner who wants to reconsider their position?
Well, I think if you're a dog guardian or trainer who is interested in getting dogs back into play, if they're you know, or sort of migrating in that direction, I would almost say to get comfortable separating dog fights. because that is a terrifying thing. If you don't know what you're doing, you can do it really wrong. You can exacerbate and make injuries worse easily.
You can get a redirect.
Yeah, and you can actually hurt dogs in a non-injurious fight by separating them wrong.
Right.
So which we used to do. That's how we learned. We learned wrong. So learn how to separate fights safely and cleanly, and then practice it and play with your dog if they're very handleable, or just in your mind.
Yeah,
like,
mechanically.
say, okay, imagine how, because dog fights are so intense and terrifying, and if they're big and if there's lots of dogs around, it's so practice it in your mind that you're going to do X, go in, grab the dog, lift their hips, back up, close the door, like work through so that you get some comfort. Because if you're dealing with dogs, especially dogs who have play style problems, you will probably have a squabble on your hands at some point in your life. So just knowing that you can handle it. Fluency. You've got, your body will know what to do. You can get through it, and then maybe you'll cry at the end. Maybe it'll be like, maybe it's time for a whiskey, but hey, everybody's happy. If nobody's hurt and nobody's getting scared, then that's okay. So I would say get the skill of
everybody argues and so do dogs.
Yeah. And we can intervene safely and keep our dogs safe if we need to. So I think having that skill set, if you're going to be around playing dogs, is useful and important. And I used to teach that to my puppy class parents. We used to do those kind of things as handling exercise.
And then the dogs also get really good at being handled in those kinds of situations. Yeah,
they're over threshold and a little bit. Yeah.
And some dogs are so good at recalls that you can call them out of fights.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm on training in there somewhere. Put it on your recall.
Wow. That's training.
That's an impressive recall.
Maybe my dogs are just squabbly enough that it's not a big deal when they squabble. So they're like, okay, whatever, I won't.
Yeah.
There's food involved.
I'd rather have the goat cheese. Bye.
Yeah.
I think if we can get ourselves comfortable with that level of intensity, then we can be like, and then maybe you will never have a dog fight, which would be great for you, know?
Yeah.
But if you're comfortable saying fights may happen and I can handle it as a practitioner, then I think that would be a useful skill. That'd be what I think.
And it should be said that, and I think Jean already said it, but it should be said, we're not talking about dogs that have done, grievous injury to other dogs. We're not talking about maiming, force bites, dogs that have needed staples, sutures, drains, as a result of two dogs interacting. Those, of course, we would all be we would not be putting those dogs
Arguing
back.
is not assault.
But assault is a different thing.
And then also dogs that are scared of other dogs. I mean, train them, but if there's, we can have these thoughts. We can separate these thoughts. Some dogs aren't good for dog play,
Doesn't mean
that. Dogs don't want dog play, and that's perfectly fine. Right.
But for those dogs who do,
it's a welfare issue not to allow it or give them opportunity. Yes. I agree.
That I think is the one message. If people leave with nothing else, that if dogs would want to play, that they should be granted the opportunity, and to fail to do so is like an agency fail, it's a welfare fail, it's a enrichment fail, yeah.
Okay, I have one image I want to leave everybody with. Actually, yesterday, Archer, my 130-pound giant livestock guardian dog, was on his back because Soleil, who's like 40 pounds, had got him down and was like trying to chew his, they're playing very, quite roughly, but Soleil obviously could not. Soleil's entire body would fit in Archer's head, but she had him on his back, and he's like,
You're killing me.
And that's like the thing of play. As we're talking about self-handicapping. He was self-handicapping so that she would, beautiful.
There was no way she could ever physically pin him. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes I love it. I love self-handicapping too. When you see a dog that's pulling their punches really clearly and obviously for either an
open mouth bites.
I love it. It's so beautiful.
I love it so much. I do too. God, I love dogs, and I love dog play. When it's intense and when it's gentle, I love it all.
Yeah, and our hope is that anybody watching this, that that might open up kind of a whole new sort of like area of wonder and appreciation for them if they get to witness their dog playing.
And as a practitioner, helping people get their dogs into play.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Yes.
Feeling, right?
Yeah. Thank you guys. I think this is such a good discussion, such a good place to end it. Thank you for your wisdom, your experience.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
articulate.
you for my wisdom.
Yeah, thank you for her.
Yeah, exactly.
Appreciate
Bye,
it.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.